We're trying to figure out the rules of engagement. Hey, man, everybody's armed. If they fire at our vehicle, we're all going to die because we're in soft-skin vehicles. There's no protection. AK-47, hot knife through butter.
Welcome to Combat Story. I'm Ryan Fugit, and I served Warzone tours as an Army attack helicopter pilot and CIA officer over a 15-year career. I'm fascinated by the experiences of the elite in combat. On this show, I interview some of the best to understand what combat felt like on their front lines. This is Combat Story. Today we have round one of a fantastic two-part combat story with a former guest, Darrell Utt, a longtime Green Beret and retired Master Sergeant. Darrell just finished writing a book going into great detail about one of his deployments when he was a team sergeant with ODA 043 in 2006 to Iraq that includes all the highs and lows of leading a team of elite Green Berets. We met with Darrell 2 years ago for an episode watched by over 100,000 people, and this time around we get into even more of the moments, experiences, and emotion in some of the fighting that Darrell has unearthed while writing this book. If you pre-order his book before Veterans Day, you get a signed copy and one of the cooler challenge coins you're going to find. You can order it at ballastbooks.com. If you haven't seen our episode from 2022, don't worry. You'll get all the context you need in this one to be up and running, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy his very real, raw, and down-to-earth storytelling as much as I did. Darrell, thanks so much for coming back on round two, taking the time to share even more stories with us.
Yeah, round two. Happy to be here, man. Happy to be here. Thanks for hosting me.
Oh, of course.
It's so awesome to be here in California with you.
2.5 years after the first rundown on this, episode 74, and you and I were connected by Jordan Becker, and you have connected me with so many guests over time, and I am so thankful and grateful, not just for the interviews I've had with those guests, but the connections I've made. And I think that's a lot of what this is about. And
yeah. I still have some more connections.
I know. I'm so excited for everyone I can get. But really this time, what we talked about in episode 74, and we were just joking before we hit record that I think over 100,000 people have watched the two of us talking about some interesting moments, and we'll get into even more. But you're back because we got the book, Grit to Glory. You can see some pictures if you're watching online, and if not, you can take a look in the description where you can go get that, including an autographed copy and a very cool coin, a challenge coin.
I have a lot of credit goes for you for that, Ryan. You were the one that first planted that seed in my mind about the book, and here we are, 2.5 years, and here's the book.
Yep. I find it hard to believe that I may have been one of the first people to mention this to you, just given how crazy some of the stories are. Even some of the names, Ugly Baby comes to mind, and
right
at some of these moments in Alive Days and whatnot. But I'm so glad you did it. I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about what it was like writing the book. I've only heard from others about how hard it can be to put a lot of the emotion into it. Sure, I may have mentioned it to you, but what made you want to make it yourself?
What made me want to write the book?
Yeah.
Well, after you first mentioned it, you were my very first podcast. So thank
you for that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And then as I continue to do podcasts, I guess that maybe I was practicing, or I just kept doing them. And the hosts would typically say the same thing at the end once we got off the air. It was like, man, you really need to write a book. And I just kept hearing it over and over and over again. And then I started thinking about it, and I look at it a couple different ways, but to really turn like Iraq and Afghanistan, what happened there with us leaving and all of those type of things, it's really turning a negative into a positive, because I know that I have some stories that I could share, some lessons learned from my experience in combat that hopefully will help the next generation. Hopefully I can inspire some folks. I definitely wanted to honor some folks, honor the folks on my team, honor the people that served. And I'm sure you were the same way growing up, Ryan. But, I grew up reading books about the Vietnam era guys and gals, and the LERPs and the Rangers and Nick Rowe, 5 Years to Freedom, and About Face, Colonel David Hackworth. I just reread that not too long ago.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's a great book. Jeez. But, I grew up reading those books, and I think that they did have an impact on me. It's hard not to have an impact when you're reading about military history and wars and things like that. So I hope to do for the next generation what the generation before did for me.
That's cool.
And probably did for you as well.
That's very cool. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, for me, I read a lot of the Richard Marchenko books, but also obviously the Black Hawk Downs really, really struck, and obviously the Vietnam stories. But one of the things I really wanted to make sure we talked about is the inspiration for the book when you were looking at other books. Was there one that you were modeling this after?
Yeah, definitely. Well, you just mentioned Black Hawk Down. That was definitely at the top of the list. And two of my heroes as a young man was Gary Gordon and Randy Shugart, both from Delta Force snipers that were killed in Mogadishu. Also, I was really inspired by the book Red Platoon by Clint Romeshay for my book. And it was actually Clint, and he had a ghostwriter that he used. But I love the way Red Platoon, it's like that raw combat, that raw behind the scenes kind of dark soldier humor. I just love the way that book was written and how it just like grabbed you and just sucks you in, and it's hard to put down. And it's a book I would probably say, and I can't say this for a lot of books, like I just mentioned About Face, David Hackworth. I know for a fact I've read that book twice because it's like flipping this big. It's huge. And that man saw a lot of combat, a lot of like just difficult Korea trench warfare.
It's crazy.
Like, I know for a fact I've read that book twice. I can honestly sit here and look you in the eyes and tell you I've read Red Platoon probably at least 20 to 25 times.
Wow.
Sometimes I just read it over. It just grabs me. And my co-author that helped me write Grit to Glory, Lauren Ungouty, best-selling author. I think she's written 12 or 13 books now. But she said, "Hey, what are you looking for? Like, give me some style, or give me some books that you really like." And Red Platoon and Black Hawk Down just totally jumped off the page for me. And then she said, "Okay, let's talk about Red Platoon. You really like Red Platoon. Like, why do you like it so much?" And it's like, it's a page turner. Like, it sucks you in. And I love, it's like a roller coaster. And, there's the humor side, but then there's the no kidding combat. There's life, there's death, all those things. And I really want my book to put the reader in the front seat. Like, we're driving through Baghdad and we're in a firefight and they get to experience what it's like to be on a special forces team.
Awesome.
That's what I'm after.
I love it.
And Ryan, you read the
I've
manuscript.
Read it. Yeah. So, I mean,
hopefully we delivered.
Part of the reason we're doing this now is just ahead of when this thing gets released in late November, early December to kind of general population. But, folks, I would encourage you can go ahead and pre-order this now and get a signed copy and a coin. And I think if you like combat story, if you've tuned into this, this is going to be your kind of book. So
yeah, it's got a little bit of everything too. I mean, it's got the combat stories, it's got the firefights, it's got emotional things, it's got family type things, it's got team dynamics. It's a book about leadership and resilience, and when life punches you in the face, what do you do? Yeah. All those type of things.
We talked about this. Some of the things we'll get into today aren't all the glory. It's some of the downsides there too, which I think it's super important for everybody to hear, that we all go through the ups and downs. And I would just applaud you for having included that in the book, when it's probably pretty easy to say like, we don't need to mention that.
Yeah. Can we gloss over some of the bad stuff? Yeah. And that's where Lauren came into play as an experienced author that could, kind of like guide me. Because there were some things that was like, do I really want to talk about this? Or, just how close I did come to getting fired before the rotation started. And she's like, hey, that's being authentic. And that's what people want to read. They want to read and see that you're vulnerable and you're being authentic and you're sharing the whole story, because it's too easy just to cover the highs and not dip down and see the lows. So this is definitely not a superhero story and everybody's, heroes. Like, there's there's a lot of things that happen in this book. It's not all jackpots. There's some dry holes too. So there is a little bit of everything.
What was the hardest part about writing it for you?
The hardest part about writing it, there's one incident that happened in 2006, and it's described in the book, the chapter of the book. It's Morgue Day. And this is after the Civil War had ignited in Iraq, which was 22 February 2006. And Iraq was already a very dangerous, deadly place already. And then on the 22nd of February 2006, Al-Qaeda bombed a Shia mosque, and it ignited a full-blown civil war. So as a result of this, the deaths in and around Baghdad just skyrocketed. And my team, my special forces team, we were at ground zero. We had front row seats to this whole thing. So there was a day, it was maybe a month or two after, the Civil War actually igniting, that one of our Iraqi workers was murdered, and the body was at the hospital/morgue, and we went and recovered the body from the morgue. Well, when that happened, almost immediately when I walked out of the morgue, I just pushed that so far down and compartmentalized it. I never talked about it.
What you saw?
What I saw.
What you saw? Yeah.
Yeah. It was terrible. And it was the worst of humanity is what I saw. And I buried that so deep. And then I have an author, and we're putting together these stories. And that was one of the big stories, was Morgue Day, because what we did that day and the relationship that we built and the trust that we built, it would come back. We would see it later, like the results. But that particular incident, I was very sensitive to. I didn't want to go there. And that's why it's so important to have a great author and to have a great friend, colleague, confidant, buddy, because Lauren was able to very, in a delicate way, like, hey, Darrell, we need to talk about this. I know this is very hard for you, but is there a way that we could maybe discuss this that's more comfortable for you? Or would you like to write it down and let me read it, and then we can talk about it? So we went back and forth on strategies, and she was very delicate with the whole thing. And I ended up writing page after page after page, and it just kind of came out. And it was very tough because, a lot of the bodies that were in the morgue had, you could clearly see that they'd been tortured. And it wasn't just male-aged fighters, which don't care, not a big deal. It wasn't that. There were women there were kids there, and it was just the worst of humanity. And we got through that, and I thought I was doing pretty good. I gave her the story, like, hey, here's some things. And then she came back and said, Darrell, I really need some emotion with this. Like, what did you feel? What did you see? What did you smell? What did you hear? Those type of things. And she just was able to do it in a very professional way. And, I'm not the first military guy or the first special forces, special ops guy that she's worked with. She's worked with SEALs. She's worked with another author, Jeff Morris, who saw a lot of very, up close. A lot of his own soldiers were killed in Iraq. So she's dealt with this before, and I'm just super thankful that she was able to do it, because if she would have approached me maybe in a different way, or if she was inexperienced or she had never done it before, I think I probably would have just shut down. Because no kidding, man, it was buried deep into my conscious.
Was it good to get that out, or?
It really was. I didn't realize that at the time, though, Ryan.
Yeah.
But afterwards, it was very therapeutic. And it was almost like a secret that I had. Like I was keeping the secret that I saw this carnage and the worst of humanity. And, maybe I felt like I shouldn't have saw that or didn't need to see that. But it was just very dark. And but once it came out, it was therapeutic, and I was able to actually go back and look at that for what it was. Like, hey, I didn't do this. Yep. This was another evil force at play that did this carnage. I was there to try to help those people. And I think that kind of like helped me repackage it. And then my wife was the first person to read once we had a complete manuscript, and Lauren and I went back and forth, and my wife was able to read it for the first time. I felt like I owed her that since we were paying for the book. But it really, because my wife didn't know these stories, so I think maybe our podcast, our first one, she got to hear some of these things. But she got to read the stories, and it was like I kind of had a partner, like, okay, you know what I went through. And I feel like I'm a work in progress to this day. There's things that, we just have to work through. And I think that's why I like to jump on the treadmill, and it just helps with the whole mental part. But now that I know she's aware of this. And I think maybe she can give me a little bit. I mean, my wife is amazing anyway, but I think sometimes if I'm maybe just a little bit rough or, maybe a little bit distant, I think she can give me more grace. And I think it's because I put, I basically bled my heart into this book, and she can see the things that I dealt with.
I wonder why it is we don't talk more with our spouses about those things up front.
It's a great question, because that's your partner, that's your life partner. And I think it would be very helpful if we did.
And you kind of want them to understand how impactful something like that was to you in your life, but then we kind of bury it, which is odd.
It's interesting. I was talking to someone the other day, and it was like, man, after 2006 and 2007, we're talking a little bit about religion. And I was like, after 2006 and 2007, and then eventually, years later, I ended up retiring. And then I had the freedom and the option if I wanted to go to church more and all those type of things. And I thought to myself, like, hey, does God really have a place for me after the things that I've done? And the guy that I was talking to was like, dude, have you not read the Bible and how violent
welcome
the death? And I was like, that's a good point. But to go back to my wife, out of, her and I, my wife is a lot more religious and understands religion a lot more than I do. I'm learning. I'm literally a work in progress. So I think maybe there was a part of me, Ryan, that was worried, like, man, could this maybe change something if she knows just the things that I've had to do or the things I've been around. Mm-hmm. But I was totally wrong, man.
I know.
To go back to your point, I think it would be a good thing to talk to your partner and share some of those things. And I think it would probably help out.
I think we all get this wrong. Most of us.
Yes.
We
compartmentalize, dude.
And we think we're doing the right thing. And we also want that partner to understand how important some of those moments were, but they don't get to hear any of the details of it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So look, the title is Grit to Glory. We're going to talk more about the grit code later, but I can't imagine that there is part of grit that doesn't involve the way you grew up. So I'm wondering if you can give people, even if they listen to the first episode of us, what was it like growing up for you, and where did the grit come from?
Yeah. So I think West Virginia, which is my home state, I'm from Huntington, West Virginia. There's an abundance of grit in that state.
Just Just a quick word from our sponsor, Delete Me, and we'll get right back to this combat story. Having spent many years in the security space, I'm acutely aware of how much personal information is floating around on the web and what bad actors can do with it, from identity theft to phishing, harassment, doxing, unwanted spam calls, and more. That's why I personally recommend Delete Me. Delete Me finds and removes any personal information you don't want online and makes sure it stays off. Sign up and provide Delete Me with exactly what information you want deleted, and their experts take it from there. I love the regular, personalized privacy reports they send me, showing what info they found, where they found it, and what they removed. Delete Me isn't just a one-time service. Delete Me is always working for you, constantly monitoring and removing the personal information you don't want on the internet. Take control of your data, keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now, at a special discount for our listeners, today get 20% off your Delete Me plan by texting COMBAT to 64000. Text COMBAT to 64,000. The only way to get 20% off is to text COMBAT to 64,000. That's COMBAT to 64,000. Disclaimer, message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. And now, back to this combat story.
So yeah, from Huntington, West Virginia. Both of my parents started out really young, blue-collar workers. Neither one of them graduated high school, and they just plunged into work and raising a family, So I had an older brother and a sister. I was the baby, so I was already at a pretty huge disadvantage being the youngest person. And then, I talk about this in the book. It came from an abusive family, and it's still kind of a little bit hard for me to even say that now, because, I lived through it, and, here I am, I survived, and I've heard other people's story, and it's like, well, it wasn't really that bad, but I mean,
it wasn't great either.
Yeah, it wasn't great either. And it was definitely taken to a higher extreme. And this goes into the alcohol argument, or the alcohol discussion, that you start mixing alcohol into things. It tends to make things a little bit worse. And my dad had a problem with alcohol as a younger guy. And then, he's probably trying to provide for a family. And then he's got a marriage he's got to contend with. And so alcohol was definitely a big thing. And then he was very abusive to my mom. Even in front of us as young kids, which was tough, because you can't do anything as a young kid, and you see your dad that's hitting, slapping around your mom, and it's tough, But, and my mom was, she had came from an abusive family as a little girl. So then she gets married, she has an abusive husband. And then, for gosh sakes, 3 strikes you're out. She worked at a mental health institution, and she would come home several times with black eyes from the patients, and was typically fighting and doing all kinds of things at work, getting her hair pulled out. So I think, and I'm not trying to make excuses or anything like that, but I think that combination made it really toxic. And then there's 3 kids running around, in the house. And, so I think she took a lot of her anger out on us, and we just happened to be there. And, spatulas, belts, wooden spoons, throw stuff. Like, it was the whole gamut. And I say all these things, and I just want to be very clear about this, because I'm sure my sister will be listening in. But my sister really took the brunt of it. And I don't know if it's like a mom-daughter thing, or it was the middle child thing. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know. But for whatever reason, my sister took the brunt of it. We all got it bad. And of course, they were, when I was a freshman in high school, my sister was a senior, and my brother had already graduated and was in college and all that stuff. So I got to see, when I started my sophomore, junior, senior year, I got to see and witness the end of the marriage, where my older brother and sister were already out of the house. I got to see that. So I was part of a fight / argument over a loaded shotgun that my mom wanted to shoot my dad, and I was able to wrestle. My dad was like, "Do it, shoot me." And I'm just like in the living room. I can't believe this is happening. And I know the shotgun is loaded because Dad and I were big hunters, and I'm like, oh man, this gun is loaded. It's not unloaded. Like, it's loaded, ready to go. And I had to go in their bedroom and wrestle this shotgun away from my mom. And that was tough. And I think what my mom was trying to do, she was trying to get me to graduate high school. Just like, let me get to that point where he graduates and then this is over. And she couldn't make it. She made it probably a couple months into my senior year. No, she didn't. I think she made it like right at the beginning because football season, I played football. And I remember she went to my games, but she sat on the visitor side because she didn't want to have any interaction with my dad on the home side. It was very contentious, man. It was a rough divorce. But I remember the day that she left. Her and Dad had been arguing and fighting, which was typical. And I just sat down. I had a plate of food, and I had it in my lap, and had the TV, watching TV. And I think Dad had thrown his plate of food at the wall. I mean, it was crazy, man. He had thrown his plate of food at the wall, and she came in, and she grabbed my plate out of my lap and set it to the side and gave me a real tight hug and said, "Hey, this has nothing to do with you. But
oh my gosh,
I love you." And she walked out the door, and that was it. So yeah, man. And so that was my family. That was like the family dynamic. And I think that's where a lot of the toughness and grit came in, just from that. But I also was a football player. I played all sports, but I was really good at, well, I can't say I was really good. I mean, I was decent at football, but that was kind of like my sport. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I played baseball, basketball, football growing up. And then once I got to high school, I just focused on football. And I love giving a shout out to my football coach, Coach Thornburg, because he's retired Sergeant Major from 19th Special Forces Group. He's National Guard. And we had a tough football program because when I was younger, we weren't very successful, and we got our ass beat most games, which really goes into the toughness as well. I mean, when you get knocked down, you get punched in the face, you got to get back up. No one's going to feel sorry for you. Put your big boy pants back on and get after it. So, I grew up playing football, and we weren't successful. And then my 9th grade year, I played varsity. Well, I can't say I played, but I was on the varsity team, just was an extra. But we got our ass kicked the whole year. And then the sophomore year, we started winning a little bit. And then my junior year, we had a winning team. And then my senior year, we went to the playoffs. So we kind of turned it around. But, and I think we talked about this on the first episode, when you're a 14-year-old kid who's just kind of like went through puberty or maybe going through puberty, and you're going up against kids that are 18 years old, that are grown men, that shave. It's a whole different animal when you're like a practice player for the varsity guys. And Monday through Thursday, they're going to come in and they're pissed off because they got their ass beat the Friday before, So they abused us. And I remember wearing the pads and having all the bruises up and down my arms, and it was tough, man. But I'm grateful for that experience because it made us really, really tough. And then, like I said, back to the football coach, Coach Thornburg, being a special forces guy, I wouldn't know until years later that he basically ran our football team like a special forces team.
Like, this looks similar.
Yeah.
I've seen this before.
Like he worked out with us, like he was like the team sergeant, and it really was, it was an interesting flashback once I pieced it all together. But I think that's where, Ryan, that's a long way to answer your question, but that's where the grit and the toughness comes in, is from humble beginnings, poor, hunting, fishing, trapping,
Yep.
Sports, and just that rough, tough family life. It really helped build me, those strong foundational roots for what I was going to become later on.
So it sounds like from hearing this, maybe Thornburg is more of the mentor or father figure, I don't know, that is with you for those formative years.
Yeah. No, my dad was a great mentor and father figure as well. He was like my sports, athletic, fishing, hunting, trapping guy. So he kind of made me a man, or, doing the boy stuff. And my mom, surprisingly enough, is the one that made me really mental tough, like really mentally tough, because she was a very mentally tough woman because of the abuse that she went through. And so I got could I say I got the best of both worlds? Like I got all the manly stuff from my dad, but I really got that crazy mental toughness, like just almost stubborn, like a mule kind of thing. And I don't know if I shared this before or not, but right before my mother passed, this is how stubborn and just mentally hardcore she was. Right before she passed, and I think this is kind of accurate because I wasn't there, my sister was, but I believe she had something with her heart, and she had some kind of problem with her heart. And the doctor said, hey, we need to do, like, let's just say it's like open heart surgery or whatever. Like, we need to do something. You got some blockage. We need to clean all this stuff up. And she's like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do that. And he said, listen, we do need to do this, because if you don't do this, you're going to die. And she said, well, I'm not doing it. And he's like, I'm giving you my best medical advice. If you don't do this procedure, you are going to die, like soon. And she said, I'm not doing the procedure. And he said, okay, then you're going to go to hospice and you're going to be dead very soon. And that's what she decided to do.
And that's what happened?
That's what happened. Yeah. That was her decision. My sister was with her the whole time and took care of her all the way up till the end. But for whatever reason, she didn't want to go through with the procedure that they wanted her to do. She was just like, okay. That's how, like, that's extreme, Ryan. That's like extreme. But that's where I got my mental toughness.
How does all of that, and I know the grit builds with a lot of what we're going to talk about, right, with your time in service. But how does that upbringing influence you as a leader going into the military? Maybe not going into the military. Later, once you're leading other men, if at all.
Yeah. I think that's a great question. I think it definitely, I had a huge dose of humility, and I think that's something I carry
from how you grew up, you're saying.
From how I grew up. Yeah. And I wasn't the guy that was wearing Nike and Converse. I just saw not too long ago Kmart closed like one of their last major stores. I think it was somewhere in New York. And they only have like a couple small ones left, but that's where we did our shopping. Kmart, Blue Light Special, jeans and shoes and all of that stuff. And everybody knows.
Yeah,
if you're not wearing Nike and Converse, you're wearing like the Kmart Blue Light Special stuff. And I remember, I'd still like to run into this guy. I remember... I don't, and I really don't even know who this guy is to this day, but it was like an Adam Ant. Have you ever heard of that guy? Adam Ant. I think he was like a singer or something, but he's like a, older, generic, not very popular. So I'm wearing like an Adam Ant concert t-shirt, and somewhere Blue Light Special, Kmart special thing. And, all the kids were wearing Rat and Cinderella and Motley Crue and all that stuff. And I remember this one kid in particular was making fun of the way I would, I was wearing sweatpants and this Adam Ant shirt. And, it's like, my mom doesn't even know who that is. And, how kids are. But
you say your mom knows who I am? Did you hit him with that?
No, I wish I would have. I wish I would have. That would have been a hell of a comeback. But yeah, I think all of those things really contributed.
Yeah.
It gave me a big piece of humility, and I think that really carried over well for me. Going into special forces, because let's be honest, some special forces guys can be a little arrogant, a little full of themselves. So I was never that guy, and I think it's just because of the way I was raised.
I feel like you don't meet a ton of them. I'm sure being in the community, you've run into plenty of them. You just seem to more cerebral, down to earth guys for whatever reason. I don't know what it is, but
I think most guys are. I think maybe it's the lens that you look through, because if you ask me as a brand new special forces guy, do you remember anybody being a little cocky and arrogant when you were brand new? And I do.
Yeah,
I remember.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I remember the first time I was ever on a set of military skis, and I was in Garmisch, Germany. Never skied before a day in my life. Wasn't a mountaineering guy, nothing. And I'm on these skis, and I am basically doing what we call the Gore-Tex slide. We got our Gore-Tex, and the skis come off because you just crashed and burned, and then you're just like doing the Gore-Tex slide down the slope. And we're in flipping Germany. So we're out there training, and of course, people are enjoying, It's like, civilians are out there, civilian Germans, and of course they're laughing. But then you have the German army that were there training, and they're all like, to me, they were
grew
all
up
like
on
Olympic
skis.
style.
Yeah.
Like these dudes look like Olympic athletes. So if you asked me as a young guy if I thought there were some special forces guys that were arrogant, yes, because there were guys that had the cool Oakleys, the hair gel. They had the little white thing going across their nose because they were no shit. They were ski instructors, and I'm out there. I have like my black silkies, my top and bottom, and then I have my Gore-Tex, and I'm just like a big ringing sweat mess because I don't know what I'm doing, and I keep crashing into the snow, and I'm frustrated, and I'm cussing. And it's like, oh, look at the rummage cell over there because, all this
everything's
stuff.
flying.
Yeah. So, and then you got these real pretty looking guys with the gel hair and the sunglasses. And I'm like, that dude is so cocky, so arrogant. But I think it's just the lens. And then, as I got a little bit older, more mature, more experienced, every now and then I might see a guy like on another team that would be like, dude, I would jack that dude up because he's a little bit full of himself. Yeah.
So I'm going to jump ahead just a bit.
Sure.
And this is obviously pre-2006, but just talking about like learning to ski, right? I know that the Army doesn't make most courses fun, but there is something every time I've looked at like Q course selection, like 18 months going through that pipeline, you do some pretty cool stuff in that pipeline. At the time, I assume it's pretty painful going through it. Like you're probably being evaluated every day, could get cut at any moment. But is it a hell of a lot of fun looking back on some of that? Or is it still so hard because the mental side of you could be gone any day?
Looking back on it, it's like, oh my gosh, especially as an older man, it's like, man, I can't believe that I did that. Looking back, it's been almost, next year it'll be 25 years since I went to Ranger School. And I still have those memories because I was flying through Ranger School. I went as a 30-year-old. I had a long tab. I was a Special Forces guy. And
did you say a long tab?
Yeah, Special Forces tab.
Is that what you call that? Because it's just longer than a Ranger tab?
Yes.
A long tab. Interesting. Okay.
Excuse me, which goes into what we were talking about early with long tab brewing.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I went through Ranger School as a 30-year-old man, already been to Special Forces, and to look back at that, it's like, man, it's kind of like being an NFL running back and you hit 30. And it's kind of like, hey, man, your prime's kind of behind you. You can still go out there and do it, but you're not like what you were when you were 25 or 28. That's kind of how I felt a little bit, especially when you're there with like 20-year-old kids from Ranger Regiment, and they're hardcore, you know? So yeah, looking back to like Special Forces assessment and selection, and to think of some of those events, and it's like, man, my body would break. My body would break in half right now. Like there's no way I could do that. So it does, you know, there is a feeling there. The hardest thing mentally, that was the most taxing on me, exhausting, was trying to learn Morse code though. Like, you know, the rucks were tough and the runs and, you know, all the different things that you got graded on, like all of that stuff was really tough. But the thing, and I mentioned it in the book, learning Morse code almost broke me. The dits and the dashes and all the dots and dashes, like, man, it almost broke me down. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to survive this. And I was able to find like a second gear and kind of work my way out of it. But dude, Morse code was really tough for me. It was tough, dude.
Oh, but even that, I mean, you got the jumping, skiing. I didn't even realize that was a part of it.
Skiing was once
later,
already,
once you're in.
Yeah. And you know, that's funny too. That's a funny story. So back when I went, like they are always changing the order of the courses and all that stuff. So for me, when I went through Special Forces qualification course, Robin Sage was the culminating exercise, right?
Yep.
After Robin Sage, you earned your Green Beret. And then once you had your Green Beret, you could wear your Green Beret. You're still a student. And then you go to language school. And for me, I went to 4 months of German. So I forgot where I was going with that. Yeah. So graduated the Q course, and I'm in 4 months of German. And then I know I'm getting ready to go to Stuttgart, Germany. That's my first duty assignment, which was kind of a big deal back then, was to go to a forward deployed battalion, which means basically if something's going to go down in the world, it's probably going to be the forward deployed battalions, you know, part of Special Forces that'll be there faster. That's just, you know, that's the way it is. But I remember being in language school and a guy showed up, and I was just looking at this guy's, like his memorial thing, because he was tragically and unfortunately he was killed in Afghanistan a couple years later. Or I'm sorry, he was killed in Iraq, IED. But this guy, John, he came and pulled the guys that were going to 1st Battalion, to Stuttgart. He pulled us out of the classroom and he asked us a few questions. And he was asking on behalf of the guys that were in Germany already, like the leadership. And what he asked me was like, oh, Darrell Utt, have you ever skied before? No, never, not one day. Because they were looking at me like, oh, this kid's from West Virginia.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think they were just assumed mountains, you know, all that stuff. Have you ever skied? No, I've never had a pair of skis on my life. To me, that was like golf. Like rich people.
Yeah, that's not what we do, right, guys?
Rich people golf and ski, not poor kids. And then he said, have you ever done any mountaineering? I was like, never. Not once, ever. And he's like, okay. And then somehow I ended up on a mountain team. And it's like, how do you do that, man? Like, that's just crazy. Like, why would you put a guy on a mountain team that's never had any experience in that? Which kind of goes to the garbage, me doing Gore-Tex slide and everybody laughing at me. So, yeah.
So 2 things before we jump into 2006 here. One is the decision to go into the military, just for people who haven't heard the first story. Where does it come from for you? Obviously, you read a lot of the books, but there's a big decision in your life to go that route. What was it for you?
Yeah, a couple of factors. One being poor family, and you know, I really didn't have a lot of opportunity to do anything else. So that was definitely one of them. And then there was military service in my family. My mom's brother was actually in the Air Force when I was growing up, and he ended up retiring out of the Air Force. Okay. And then of course, like my grandfathers and great,
they were all
uncles,
fighting.
Yeah, they were all like in World War II, different things. But the thing that really intrigued me and got my attention was when my dad told me, because my dad knew more about my family than, you know, obviously that I did. And he and I don't even think he did it on purpose, but maybe he was trying to brainwash me a little bit or influence me. But he said that no one in the Utt family had ever been a Marine. And that caught my attention. I was like, oh, I could be the first one to be a Marine. I could be the first Utt. You know, it's kind of like the families that they've never sent anyone to college. And it's like, I'm the first college graduate for my family, you know? So for me, it was like, I could say that. I was the first Marine. And that intrigued me. And then, of course, the link with my football coach. And I think that's where, like, you're kind of alluding to with the mentorship question that you ask. You know, where he knew my background, he knew my family situation, he knew we were poor, he knew I didn't have a lot of opportunities, and he knew that I was a decent kid. So he was able to mentor me and say, hey, you should look at the military. And then, of course, my dad, you know, was a wise guy. You know, he was a wise man and was like, hey, maybe you could get a trade. So that's kind of like where that military service, it originated. And yes, I tried to join the Marine Corps. I was telling you about the author of Echo and Ramadi, Scott. I told him, I said, hey, the Marine Corps was my first choice. Just want to let you know that. And he's like, well, shoot, man, what happened? And then I told him the story. You know, I had a cyst in my wrist, and they actually lied to me. They said I was going to be an air traffic controller, or I had the scores to be an air traffic controller. Because at that time, I was like, oh, I'll get a skill, join the service,
something
get my college money. I could get out and have a good job. So they lied and said that I had the scores to be an air traffic controller. And then I went all the way up to Beckley, West Virginia at the MEP station. And they said, hey, you don't have the scores to be an air traffic controller. But you can do open contract, and the Marines will tell you what you're going to do. So I was able to get on the phone with my dad, and he kind of rescued me and said, hey, they could make you a cook. How would that make you feel? I was like, terrible.
Yeah.
That would suck. And then before they could do a really serious pressure campaign, because they're really good at what they do.
They are.
I had that cyst in my wrist, and it's like, hey, son, you can't join the Marines today. You need to get this cyst cut out, and then we can talk about what you're going to do.
Bought you some time.
That bought me some time, and then I was able to go back home, and then my little West Virginia brain was able to process, like, hey, they lied to my ass, and I don't appreciate that. So I went and talked to the Army, and I say that with nothing but love. I love the Marine Corps. I support the Marine Corps. I support all the branches. But sometimes that shit just happens. I mean, they have a quota. They're trying to work a quota. Maybe it's changed now, but that was my experience. And I think it all worked out in the end. It worked out pretty good.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Speaking of working out, I guess this is the other thing that I just wanted to touch on. The moment you get your Green Beret the first time, like when that's given to you, do you still remember that moment?
Yeah,
How'd it feel?
It's heavy, man. It's
iconic. That is an iconic part of American history.
Yeah, you know, and I can't steal this. I'm gonna use a quote from someone else, but this comes from Nick Lavery, who's a very well-respected, well-known Green Beret, still serving. His leg was shot off in Afghanistan. Just a beast of a man, just a beast. But I heard him, I believe I read it. He posted it somewhere. He's like, man, all the guys that spend so much time just busting their ass, crushing it to earn a Green Beret that you go on to, you don't want to wear anymore. You want to wear a ball cap, or you want to wear a soft cap, or you want to wear anything else besides that Green Beret. But all the blood, sweat, tears, hard work, determination, grit, all the things that go into it. And then once you get it, you want to wear something else. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
And I never thought of it that way until I heard Nick say that. And I was like, dude, that is genius. That is very funny. But to me, it was a heavy moment. And then, you know, luckily, you have mentors and people that have been around to kind of guide you and give you advice like, hey, I know you guys went through a lot of stuff to get this, but really your journey starts today.
Yeah.
Because now that you're wearing this and everybody's looking at you, you got to earn it every day. So yeah, I do remember that. And I do remember my dad was so proud. My dad was so proud. My mom was proud too, but I had a picture of me and my dad in front of our house in North Carolina. And, I'm in my uniform and I got my Green Beret, and it was like he was beaming, it was like, man, my son, So as a father now,
for sure,
man, I could barely keep it together when my son graduated basic and AIT at Fort Benning, Georgia. Yeah. Just to see like the blue history cord. It's like, man, he's kind of following in dad's footsteps a little bit. And, I'm barely kind of keeping it together. So now I get to experience what my dad experienced. It's kind of neat how it all comes around.
Did you ever circle back with the coach?
I did. And I'm so happy that he's still alive, and he's actually crushing it. He's doing really good. I think he had like a little bit of a scare back in the day, like maybe a heart issue or something like that, but he slimmed down, and not that I'm saying he was a big guy, but he got really, really healthy, and he's fit. And, of course he's getting up there in age. But a guy, actually one of the guys from my hometown that I played football, he was a senior when I was a junior. His name's Rick Fry. Shout out to Rick Fry. Rick heard this podcast, and it actually circulated through Huntington, West Virginia.
That's awesome.
My hometown.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So Rick reached out to me out of the blue one day, and we talked on the phone, and I asked about Coach Thornburg. It's like, man, Coach Thornburg's still crushing it. He's still alive, doing well. And he gave me his number, and I was able to call him, and I sent him a copy of the manuscript, one of the earlier copies, and I got word back through like a back channel that it was an emotional read for him to see his name in the book.
Yeah.
Like, here's the guy that I haven't talked to, and I graduated high school in 1990, so it had been several years, decades. And here's a guy that's writing about me in the book, the influence that I had on him.
Mm-hmm.
So I heard that it was really deep and emotional for him.
That's
which made me
super
feel good.
cool.
Yeah. I mean, the guy's influenced and touched so many people because just the guys that I graduated with, like all the football players. Not saying that we had a huge class. My graduating class was 70 people.
Jeez.
Small school,
small,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, small, dude. Little hick town. But several of the football players, I think we might have had, I don't know, 10 to 15 seniors. I'd say the majority of the football team went and served in the military in some branch, some capacity.
So his own little recruiting center there.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So I think for folks that are teachers or folks that are out there dealing with the youth, man, you just don't know who you're influencing. And I even mentioned a teacher from my 5th grade class. Her name's Donna Norris. That was just another teacher that saw something in me and probably knew that I didn't have much, and really kind of helped me, because I wasn't the best student. I wasn't the smartest by no means. But she just gave a little bit more to me, and I never forgot it.
That's awesome.
And I was able to thank her in the book, and I can't wait for her to read it. Yeah.
So we're going to fast forward, I think, and get into 2006. But I do think it's important, if there are points along the way you mentioned, like you join up in 1990. This is early on, well before 9/11. Obviously, 16 years before we get to this moment. And the book is really focused on, obviously, your life and then these experiences in 2006. Anything that we should kind of mentally check on before we get to 2006 and we kind of set the stage for what's about to happen for your career?
Yeah. I think we were going to talk a little bit about Operation Ugly Baby.
Yeah.
And that was 2003.
Yep.
And that was the initial invasion for 10th Group into northern Iraq. And, the plan was we were going to go to Turkey, and then all of our vehicles and gear was pre-staged in Turkey. And then we were just going to drive it across the border and be right there in northern Iraq, link up with the Kurdish Peshmerga. And the whole strategic plan was to keep 10 to 15 Iraqi divisions that were staged up north was to keep them engaged up north instead of reinforcing Baghdad, which would have just created a shitstorm. So they needed an element up north to be with the Kurdish Peshmerga, and we just happened to be that unit. The problem was Turkey did not want to cooperate with us, and they denied us use of their air and land. So the war kicked off sometime in March 2003, like the third week of March. Mm-hmm. February, we were already overseas, and we were in Romania, and we kept trying to get these flights, and the State Department was negotiating. Nothing. It wasn't going to happen. So they finally figured out, like, hey, Turkey's not going to play ball with us. So we're going to have to do something else. We're going to have to do something a little bit radical, different, a little bit more high risk than going to Turkey and getting in vehicles and driving safely across the border. So the plan they came up with was for us to go down to Jordan, and then we were going to fly from Jordan over the western part of Iraq, and then kind of like do a button hook and fly into Erbil on these 6 MC-130s. So it was 2nd Battalion, 10th Special Forces Group, which I was part of, and then 3rd Battalion, 10th Special Forces Group. So yeah, and that's what ended up happening was we got on these MC-130s, and we ended up flying in maybe the 22nd. So it was like a day or so after, when they first started bombing Baghdad and stuff like that. But they didn't have time to soften all of the AAA, the anti-aircraft artillery, because they didn't know where everything was. Mm-hmm. Like, there was a lot of stuff that was dispersed, that was out in the middle of nowhere, out in the desert. So they didn't have a good grasp of everything. They kind of knew where some stuff was. They tried to plan the route. The MC-130 pilots, who are heroes, by the way, and I'm so glad that they were recognized for their heroic actions that night when they flew us in. But because of this route and the way it looked on the map, that's why they called it Ugly Baby. I'm still a little, frustrated with the name because I think it's dumb. Operation Ugly Baby. I think if it would have been some cool name, that we'd probably have reunions in Vegas. If it was a cool name, we could have it on shirts, polos. But because it's Ugly Baby, no one really hardly ever talks about it. But it was the longest air infiltration in combat since World War II.
Jeez.
So pretty historic, several hour flight. And, we were flying nap of the earth, which is bellies on the desert floor, sometimes like 100 feet, 200 feet, like way, way low, trying to evade all of the AAA, anti-aircraft artillery. And at some point, in Western Iraq, the Iraqis really lit up the six planes. So we could obviously hear all of that going on outside the plane. And then they started doing all these crazy evasive, maneuvers, which I did not appreciate at the time. And I forever, since that time period, I'm not too keen on flying if it's not like a very stable, like it kind of messes with me. Thank goodness my flight out here today to California, American Airlines, man, they crushed it. Like, it was a smooth takeoff, smooth landing, hardly any turbulence. But yeah, when we start doing turbulence, man, I do not like it. And I think back to 2003. One time me and my kids flew into New York and we had some crazy turbulence, and it reminded me of the initial invasion. But
where are you strapped into an MC-130?
We're strapped into the belly of the floor like this.
Where are you sitting?
On the floor.
You're sitting on the floor. You're like tethered
to the floor. And a lot of guys were sitting on their gear because we had all of our stuff with us, and we had these huge rucksacks, 100, 150 pound rucksacks. It was crazy. And, to think back now, I think we lose sight of like the magnitude of what we were facing back then, because we didn't know Saddam was going to use weapons of mass destruction. And the thing is, if he would have used weapons of mass destruction, he was going to kill a lot of people. And there's not a whole lot that you can do, man. You can maybe try to make yourself a little bit comfortable until your blood boils or whatever. And I think that does bring up an interesting point about fear. I think one of the times that I was probably the most scared in my military career, especially as a younger man, was I was in basic training during Desert Shield and Desert Storm. You know, I got there in July, so that was like right at the buildup. And we're learning about, you know, chemical weapons and all this stuff for the first time. Biological, all this stuff. And they're showing us these pictures of what happens to people, you know. And then they're like, hey, you better pay attention to this class and learn how to put your protective gear on, or know how to stab yourself in the thigh with your atropine or injector or whatever. And it's like, man, I remember being terrified, because it's like, well, what do you do? And then fast forward 13 years to the initial invasion, and we're faced with the same thing. And keep in mind, a lot of our gear and all of our vehicles were in Turkey. So we land, we have to get vehicles. We have to figure out how we're going to do our food. We're waiting if he's going to use weapons of mass destruction. And man, it was kind of a crazy time period, dude. It was crazy.
Ugly baby. That's so funny, because I think the Fallujah invasion is Phantom Fury. Is that it?
That's a cool name.
Yeah, that's a cool.
Yeah, you know? Neptune Spear.
Yeah.
Neptune Spear is a cool name.
That is a cool one. Bin Laden. Oh.
But going back to that time period, it's funny that we knew we were prepping for Iraq, but we didn't know all about Iraq. I mean, there's just some things you have to see to kind of believe. Yeah. And I remember being culturally exposed to some of the Iraqi ways that they do things. And we were very unfortunate as a Special Forces team back in 2003, and we were kind of the redheaded stepkids in our battalion, because before I got there, my team, they were doing some demolition training, and they had a mishap, and a guy got fucked up. Like, I think the 18 Delta, Keith Parrish, who's just a phenomenal medic, ended up saving that guy's life and getting him medevaced out. If it wasn't for Keith, I think the guy would have died. That's how bad he was. Wow. I think he's good now. But they had a mishap during like train up, and they were trying to rank and who's going to go where, which teams are going to do what missions. So before I got to the team, this guy got blown up and was injured really bad, and that put our team at the bottom of the list. So we were left out in the cold, for all the missions. They gave us an enemy prisoner of war camp. It's like, hey, you guys are going to establish an enemy prisoner of war camp, build it, run it, figure it out, coordinate with the Red Cross, because the battle plan back then was it was going to be based off capitulation. That's what the intel that they were feeding us. Like, hey, there's going to be mass capitulation. Almost like, the tanks will do this, the turrets will go back, all the soldiers will put their AKs this way. The senior officer in charge will keep his pistol, and that's not a big deal. It's so he can control the troopies. So it was all capitulation. Wow. And that didn't happen. It didn't happen because the Saddam Fedayeen were killing dudes that were deserting. So it was like, hey, I'm either going to fight and die against these dudes, or my own people are going to kill me. So that really, there weren't a lot of prisoners or, bat party, high level, and then if there were, the Kurdish wanted them.
Oh, of course.
Because they have their own ways. They can drink tea together and do high fives or whatever they were going to do. So at our little enemy prisoner of war camp, I think we had like one dude. And he was like a senior enlisted or a warrant officer guy. And we'd been prepping for this guy for a while. And we thought he was going to be like a big deal. Like, is he like the six of clubs? Or it's like, man, this dude didn't even make it. Like, he's not even close to being on the... He was like going back to the Uno cards for Kosovo that we would do later. But which is another funny story, the yellow draw too. But this dude was a nobody, and the Kurdish, I think, were just trying to entertain us. Like, we'll give the Americans like one dude. And then, we were so prepped and ready because that's all we had to do every single minute of the day was to get ready. And actually, this isn't so cool, but we had like this schoolhouse, this like abandoned school is what we used for the enemy prisoner of war camp, which didn't really last that long. But we had the Red Cross that came in and hey, how do you do the sanitary stuff? How do you do the feeding? And it's like, hey, whatever you guys eat is what they eat. So if you guys eat twice a day, they eat twice a day. If they eat 3 times a day.
Interesting.
If you eat 2 MREs, they eat 2 MREs. Like, it can't be that you guys are eating, chicken and rice and you're giving them crackers and cheese from the, so that's how we're going to keep everything legit. And I remember to this day, this guy, he was kind of a bigger guy, the senior enlisted warrant officer. And he'd be like, you Americans, you feed me too much. You feed me too much. So good to me. Thank you. Thank you, mister. Thank you. And it was like, oh my gosh.
This is what I'm doing.
This is what I'm doing for the initial invasion. Like, this is the punishment. But, going back to the culture thing, we were there. It was our team, our special forces team, and we had some Kurdish Peshmerga. And everyone knows the reputation of the Kurdish Peshmerga as fierce fighters. Like, they are down to fight. And they had our respect. But culturally, we weren't prepared for how they do things. And I remember being on night duty the first time I got exposed to this, and luckily it didn't do anything visually. I just heard it, but I wasn't prepared. Like the Kurdish soldiers, they would have sex with one another, and they'd be in like one room, like 20 dudes, and you could hear like stuff going on in there, and it's like, is that what I think I'm hearing? Like,
does anybody tell you that's going to happen?
I didn't know that. I didn't know. Like, and I never served in Afghanistan, but I would hear from all the Afghanistan folks that there were similar things with the chai boy and all that type of stuff. And this wasn't anything like that. This was consensual or semi-consensual, with the Kurds, but man, I was not prepared for that. It was like, hey, man, to each their own, but it still kind of freaked me out a little bit. And then it kind of, played with my mind a little bit because I'm like, man, these dudes are fighters. Like, they are down to fight. But it's like, okay, they just have a different lifestyle. That's fine. But, obviously it didn't change anything. No, but it was just something for us to be aware of. Yeah. So, yeah.
You're like, look, I'm a West Virginia boy, all right? Yeah. I'm seeing this stuff for the first time.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Sure. It's interesting mentioning the EPW camp. So and the idea, like, under Geneva Convention, we feed them what we eat, right? Yeah. And obviously you guys are ready for battle. Like, you're eating a lot, like, in case you get called in.
Yeah.
Trying to maintain muscle mass and everything else. Just a couple weeks ago, I was traveling to Latvia, and I went to a former KGB headquarters in Riga, the capital. So this is a Baltic country, borders Russia, so Soviet Union days. This was a Soviet Union satellite. And the KGB set up in the center of town. They converted an apartment building into their headquarters with a prison in the basement. So they give tours right now, and there's not a lot going on in Latvia. This tour, they do this tour probably 10 times a day, and it's sold out almost every time. Like, we were lucky to get tickets, another buddy and I. So we go in, and this Latvian guy gives us a tour. They take us through like where they in-process people, the areas where they're stored, where people have to sleep. And I mean, it is terrible. The interrogation rooms, you can only imagine. But they're feeding these guys like fish soup and a slice of bread, and they're there for years. And I mean, it's terrible. It's the Russians at their finest doing what they do best. And
that would be horrible.
It's just so funny what you went through. Like, all right, we're in combat. We're the elite SF unit, and what they eat, we eat. They eat what we eat. And it's just such a different standard that we hold ourselves to across the board. That's just so interesting to me. That's kind of what you experienced.
Luckily, we had the 173rd ended up, jumping in. And I'm not going to make any 173rd jokes because I have a lot of good friends that serve there. And that was all part of the strategy, was to keep those divisions up north. Like they needed, it's like, hey, they got these special dudes running around. But then it was like, that was part of like, hey, they're up here. We need these units to fight these dudes. So to keep them from reinforcing. So I know it was very strategic for them to kind of do the show of force and to jump in and all that. And it was very important that they were there. Also, we had the 10th Mountain. And as soon as the 10th Mountain came in, because they were dealing with the same thing, they couldn't go through Turkey. So they ended up relieving us at the enemy prisoner of war camp, and it freed us up. And we were able to go to Altun Capri and liberate that little place, which ended up to be nothing. There was no resistance at all. There was some comedy going on.
Do tell.
In the Christian town. So, we had these sat phones. If you remember
back in the day.
Back in the day, man, the sat phones.
But that had to be cutting tech,
that was,
right? Because SF is only going to get...
Yeah. That was big, that we had a couple sat phones. We had the little sat pagers, that were like blocks. But, I was a little bit of a comedian, or I thought I was funny. And I thought it was, because especially when we were in Altun Capri, in and around that town, because it was a Christian town. So I always thought it was funny for me to pretend like I'm talking to President Bush on the sat phone. And, I'd have all these Iraqis because, they're seeing Americans, a lot of them for the first time. And they're like all up in our business. They're like standing around. So I always thought it would be hilarious to make kind of a big deal out of this. And I would get out of the car, shut the door, and I'd be like, shh, I'm getting ready to make a phone call. Like, this is important, right? It's like, it's President Bush. It's like, Bush, Mr. Bush, President Bush, this is Darrell. How's everything? I'm in Iraq, sir. Everything's going great here. So all the Iraqis, their eyes are getting big. So good. I thought it was funny. They enjoyed it because I think they really thought I was talking to President Bush. So they would try to yell, Mr. Bush, thank you. At that time, they were very grateful.
They liked Bush.
They liked Bush. They liked us. I think the Christians would keep liking us throughout. Yeah. But I also thought it was funny. Sometimes, I would get these packages. So actually, we would get these random care packages, which was very nice.
That was cool.
That was super cool. It's very important. But I would stockpile all of this candy. And sometimes after I do my little President Bush thing, I'd have all these people just gathered out because they're like, dude, that dude was just on the phone with the president. Like
he's a big deal.
He's a big deal. Right? Like this guy, he's a big deal. And I had this huge bag of candy in a Ziploc, a plastic Ziploc, clear Ziploc. And I'm with my buddy, Matt Gerard, and, the rest of the team's there as well. But I'm kind of hanging out with Matt. And I'm like, Matt, there's a lot of kids in the crowd. And I want to give some of this candy out to these kids, Like, I treated them kind of like they were my fans. Like, they're paparazzi, or it was like my fan club, And it's like, hey, let's just keep this little illusion thing going. And he's like, dude, I don't think that's a good idea. And I was like, dude, it's candy. Like, kind of hearts and minds. And, I think it's going to be a good thing. He goes, dude, I think probably it's going to cause a lot of fights. And they're going to fight over the candy. And then the bigger kids are going to want it. And then the older adults are going to beat the, blah, blah, blah. I was like, dude, I think they're going to understand. I was putting like my American brain on this whole thing. And I was like, hey, man, these are my people. These are my fans. I'm going to go out there and give them what they want. And I'm going to give some of this candy out. And he's like, all right, this is going to be funny. Have a good time. I get out of the truck, man, and I give out like the first handful. And I'm just mobbed, dude. Mobbed from everywhere. I've like, people are feeling like my legs, my pants. Like they're totally taking advantage of like in this mob. And then before I know it, the bag's ripped out of my hands. It's gone. There's stuff everywhere. People are fighting over it. I was like, Holy shit, man.
Is Matt like, how'd that go, Darrell?
He's laughing. I kind of slink my way back into the vehicle. I was like, all right, dude, you were right about that, and I was wrong.
Oh, man.
He's like, that is hilarious. Yeah. That is hilarious.
I did want to ask that story that you said about like, hey, our team was redheaded stepchild and like pecking order for the missions.
Yeah.
I think people may have seen that if you've read or seen 12 Strong, right? Like who gets to go in.
Yeah.
So that really happens.
That really happened to us, and we weren't 12 strong. We weren't on horseback. We would have been the guys like back in Uzbekistan, like feeding the horses or something. Like, yeah, like we had some teams that were at the top of the pecking order, like the 12 strong guys, Iraqi version, that were up on the green line with combat controllers, calling in airstrikes, killing hundreds of Iraqi soldiers.
Damn.
And armor and tanks and all that other shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
actually, one of our sister teams, the Halo team, was up on the green line, and it's actually somewhat of a famous battle for up north where we were. You know, like the Thunder Run and Baghdad and all that stuff got all the attention. But one of the missions up north, which was our sister team, the Halo team, it's called the Battle of Debeka Pass. You got a Halo team. These guys are like dug into these fighting positions out in the middle of nowhere. And then they got Iraqi tanks approaching them, like coming right at them, dude. They're like little dudes on the ground. And I'll give him a shout out. Eric Stragati was a newer guy, 18 Bravo weapons sergeant. And he was able to actually get some tank kills along with some other people. Like actually,
what was he shooting?
I think he was shooting a javelin.
Javelin? I've heard those things work.
Javelin, dude.
Almost everybody I've talked to is like, I mean, we've only fired like one of them in practice, but in combat they work as advertised.
Yeah, he was killing tanks, and so were other teams, and so were other guys, and actually we got kind of like backfilled with a team, maybe it's a company or a battalion from 3rd Special Forces Group. So it was 2nd Battalion, 10th Special Forces Group, 3rd Battalion, 10th Special Forces Group out of Fort Carson, Colorado. And then a battalion or a company, I think, I don't remember, from 3rd Special Forces Group out of Fort Bragg. And those dudes, they had served in Afghanistan in 01 or 02. So for the initial invasion in Iraq in 03, it was like, this was our cherry, kind of like our first deal. This was their second go around. They had these big ass Mad Max trucks. Like they had crazy weapon systems set up and mortars, and they were very proficient, man, very skilled, and man, they had our respect. While we had all these brand new 4-wheelers that were still silver and just right out of the box, and they got all their stuff Mad Maxed out and camouflaged and painted and gun racks and all kinds of crazy
shit. Do you
shit.
Learn from that pretty quickly? You're like,
yes.
And I'm sure as you advance and you're leading teams.
Yeah, we did. We did learn from that, and they were impressive. After Altoon Capri, though, we ended up rolling into Mosul when Mosul, like, we were there for the fall of Mosul because we were in the east in Erbil, and then we were working our way across the western part of Iraq, and we were headed toward Mosul. And the night that Mosul fell, I was driving in a soft skin vehicle because that's all we had. We didn't have gun trucks or Humvees. It was like a Toyota Hilux, soft skin. And I've always heard like there's never an atheist in the foxhole. There's no atheist in the foxhole. I call bullshit on that. I drove in for the fall of Mosul. There was 2 special forces. I was in the back, 2 special forces dudes, a driver and a TC, and they were both atheists.
And you know these guys?
I know. Yeah, they're on my team.
Yeah, they're on your team. Okay.
Yeah, they're on my team. One of them was Keith.
Okay.
And I don't know if he's an atheist anymore. I mean, it's his business if he is. I don't care. But I just remember saying, I grew up, Presbyterian and went to church, all that stuff. But we're going into Mosul, man, and it looks a little hairy, like, shit looks a little crazy. We can see the tracers and loud noises. Like, it's looking a little crazy. And I was like, man, we might want to say a little prayer on this one. It's looking pretty rough up there, boys. We're like, fuck that. there ain't no such thing as God and all this other stuff. And I was like, man, I opened up a can of worms on these two guys, and they're both like very smart, like the big brain kind of dudes. Yeah. So they're having this big discussion, and I'm like, hey, man, sorry that I even brought that up. Sorry I said that. Let's just focus on, but so get past that. So I just wanted to call BS on that whole there's no aliens in the foxhole thing. But when we came into Mosul, dude, if you watch Escape from New York, like the first one, that's what it looked like. Mosul, because we're trying to go through Mosul to get to the airport. That was kind of like the objectives, like get to the airport, secure the airport so we could bring folks in and equipment and all that stuff. But literally, man, we're in soft skin vehicles. It's dark as hell. There's a war going on in their country. And I remember passing all these dudes. Everybody's armed.
How many vehicles are you guys rolling in?
I think we were part of, I think there were several ODAs. So there's probably 10, 15, 20 vehicles or whatever. Not very much.
No.
Looking back in a big ass city like Mosul. But dude, everybody had weapons and everybody was out on the street. I remember seeing like dude, it was literally like Escape from New York. It literally was, because they're all around the fire barrels, and they all got their weapons and they're looking at us, and it's like, hey man, all these dudes are armed. Like,
what's the discussion in the vehicle, man? What are you guys talking about?
We're trying to figure out the rules of engagement.
Yeah.
Like, hey man, everybody's armed. Like, if they fire at our vehicle, we're all going to die because we're in soft skin vehicles. There's no protection. AK-47, hot knife through butter. So we're like, okay, I mean, are they going to have to pull it up? Like, you see the eyeballs, like, or is it just going to be like, hey, he's kind of looking our way, but he's not really, I don't think he's going to, we were trying to figure out, should we kill these dudes over here because they look a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more dangerous? These dudes over here looked a little bit more subdued, scared, no threat whatsoever. But these dudes look like they kind of want to dance a little bit here. So that was the discussion that we had. And that night we didn't have any skirmishes or engagements. We got to the airport. I think they were just trying to figure out who we were. Maybe what our capabilities, like, hey, if we mess with these dudes, is the whole 1 mile radius going to get bombed by all these jets and stuff? So we did have a lot of flyovers, like show of force type stuff, but it was definitely hairy, man. It was definitely hairy.
I think of that a lot with how small of a footprint you'd roll around in the middle of the chaos, basically, and how you build up the confidence to keep going.
Yeah, it was something that we dealt with later on because we did have a few skirmishes. Nothing like, we were never decisively engaged or like mano, toe-to-toe. It was kind of like some harassment fire. And, we had our soft-skin Toyota Hiluxes, and we had weapons mounted, machine guns, things like that. So luckily for us, and I know some others did get in some serious engagements, and they were able to kill a lot of folks and stuff like that. But for what we saw, it was like minor skirmishes, some harassment fire. They were scared to death of air power for obvious reasons, because they were just burning shit down. The Air Force and the other aircraft, they were getting after it, man. And we saw a lot of, actually I have a couple pictures in the book, or one picture of we saw a lot of abandoned tanks and equipment, and they just got hammered, man. They got hammered. If they didn't melt away from those vehicles, then it wasn't going to be a good day for them.
Jeez. Do you end up building up a tolerance to that, like rolling around enemy territory, just a handful of y'all over time?
Yeah, we did. And what we ended up doing was we were waiting at this time. This is back in 2003. So this is a couple of months after the initial invasion. And we were waiting for Major General Dave Petraeus,
oh my gosh,
the 101st Airborne Commander, Division Commander.
Yeah.
we were waiting for the 101st to come up north, and they were going to basically do a relief in place with us, and they were going to take over the airport, and they were going to take over Mosul. But what we ended up doing was we would go back to Erbil, and then we would drive into Mosul every day and do our patrols. And it was funny, man, because Erbil was almost like being here in San Jose. You just driving around, everything's fine. People are nice, Kurdish people love us. We love them. So we would leave Erbil, and then we would get to like a certain point, like right outside of Mosul. And then we'd be like, all right, we'd stop our vehicles. We had Ranger body armor back then. We put our Ranger body armor on. We made sure everything was ready to go. And then we'd start doing our patrols. And we were looking for, a lot of munitions and tanks. And we did have, surprisingly enough, we did have people that were trying to communicate and tell us. Of course, not a lot of us spoke Arabic. And we kind of had some interpreters, but they weren't really like full-blown, like legit interpreters. They were kind of like helpers, or like, hey, my son can speak a little bit of English. But we did have people like trying to pull us over. Hey, weapons of mass destruction, Mister, here. And it was like, we go check it out, and it would be like our artillery shells or something like that. But it does bring up something I wanted to make sure I talked about today. Strategically, I think we have a lot of room for improvement going forward.
It's a very diplomatic way of saying this.
And I'm not known for my diplomacy, but I think there is a lot of room for improvement because, all of the military bases or all of the locations that had munitions, we should have had a plan for all of those to get secured. I think it's well known. It's been researched that we went in light as hell. Way, way light. Iraq is not Afghanistan, and the horse soldiers and a few ODAs and the CIA and airstrikes and all that shit. Like that was, I think they were trying to replicate Afghanistan and Iraq and the infrastructure in Iraq. I mean, it's apples and oranges, bro. And I don't know who was on the planning side of that, but here's what I would learn later. All of that infrastructure, all those military bases, all of those locations that had munitions, all of that shit ended up getting looted. And then the Iraqis ended up taking that. And I'm sure the Kurdish Peshmerga, they squirreled a lot of shit away and they took it back to their little areas, because they're always fighting Turkey and Iran and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So they're probably, they're well equipped. But some of those other places, it was the locals that were like, hey, we're probably going to need some of this weapons and munitions and all that. And dude, I'm telling you, we couldn't go anywhere without running into it.
Man.
And we only had so much. Like my special forces team, we had like 2 special forces engineers. Of course, Matt was a former special forces engineer. And of course, we're all cross-trained and stuff like that. But we only have so much expertise and so much time to try to blow all this shit up. And I mean, it was everywhere.
Oh, interesting.
It was buried and like these big underground storage. I mean, I just don't know how they missed that, because all of that stuff that was left, if we couldn't blow it up, or the team that replaced us, or the 101st, it all ended up biting us in the ass when the insurgency kicked off later that year, the next year in 04, 05, 06, 07. We all had to deal with it.
Because they had the equipment then.
Because they took it and they used it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and you saw it kind of firsthand.
Yeah.
A couple times.
Yeah. Yeah, it was terrible. And another thing, too, that I wanted to make sure that I covered was the first sign that things are probably going to go south, or this thing isn't going to be like, we're going to be met with flowers on the hood and, they're going to be happy and giving us stuff and all this, whatever, like the stuff that you would see like from World War II. Like, I think the first sign that this isn't going to go so well was probably the capitulation part. Like, hey, we kind of thought that they were were waiting for us, and the CIA had maybe, and I'm not trying to throw the CIA under the bus, but I think there was maybe at least an understanding. Maybe I could have been way wrong, but I was like, man, someone's talking to someone, like the CIA is talking to like all these Iraqi generals that are on the books, and they're like, oh yeah, our men are going to surrender, and all this stuff. I was like, well, that shit didn't happen. So I think that was kind of the first sign. And then the second sign, I remember driving around Mosul, and we had these big ass American flags, and we were proud, man. We didn't know any better, and it wasn't just special forces guys. There was all the units that were over there. We were at war. Like, we got a chance to go to war and participate, because a lot of us didn't get to participate in Afghanistan. So this was like our big shot. And it's like, man, this is awesome. And we're driving our vehicles around with huge ass American flags. And I remember for the first time seeing people look at us like, who the fuck do you think you are, coming into our country and just doing whatever you want? And,
you
all this stuff. You could see it in their eyes. Yes.
Oh,
but I think that was the second real indication, like, dude, this could go a little south. And then, of course, the third is all the weapons and not being able to secure the infrastructure and the military installations. And then you fast forward to the decisions, the poor, badass decisions. And I say badass, not
in a good way.
It's a negative way. When they said, hey, if you're part of the Ba'ath Party, you can't be part of blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I just wish that someone had put like a lens like, hey, let's think about this in the United States, in America.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Let's think about it like this. If China comes in and they start taking over all of these places, and then they say, hey, if you were military at all, ever, you don't have a place to work, and you're not getting any of your pension or money. You're done. You're off the books. Law enforcement, like all those.
That's a very interesting way. Yeah.
I mean, just imagine. And then you go back and forth with that little scenario. And then you see, okay, that's what happened in Iraq when they did with, people that had served in the Ba'ath Party, which was damn near, a lot of people, because that was Saddam's thing. And then you look at those areas that actually resisted and fought. And I think it was a lot more nationalist than we thought. I think it's like, oh, it was Al-Qaeda.
Yeah,
I think there was a lot more people that was like, hey, man, I'm from Iraq. This is my country. Just like we would do if someone came to our country, and especially if they cut your pension or your money, or they say, hey, you have no opportunity because you served the U.S. Army. So you don't have a place here. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to fight.
Yeah.
Most likely you're going to fight. And then you look at all of those areas, and I love to go back and forth, because it's like, you can almost look and compare it to the United States. Like, like those country kind of areas, the farmers, the fishermen, all those like country kind of people, they fought us. Like, they did a good job. And then I think that was probably the same thing that you would see in the U.S. That's just my opinion, though.
What about the thing that comes up all the time, WMD?
I think
How do you
it's
think about
interesting. I think Iraqis were convinced that there was WMD in Iraq. At least the ones that we interacted with up in around Mosul, like Mr. WMD. I think they thought that, and maybe it was because, they were conditioned because of Saddam was trying to keep them in line, and he had actually used WMD against his own people. But I think he was such a good bullshit artist that his own people were convinced.
Bought it.
I think it's unfortunate that if he fooled the CIA and our government into thinking that he had WMD, and that was the whole reason for the invasion, along with some other bullshit stuff. But I just look at it now, dude, and it kind of breaks my heart, especially now, with everything that's going on in Israel. And the threat right now, at least the last I heard, and it's not like I read intelligence reports or anything. I'm just reading open source news. But the thing that I'm reading right now is Israel is worried about Iran striking Israel from Iraq. And it's like, dude, you wouldn't even have thought that. Like, that wasn't even possible pre-invasion of Iraq back in 2003. Cool. Iraq, Saddam and Iran had this relationship, man.
Hatred.
Yeah, there was like a buffer there, dude.
Yeah.
And we came in and removed that threat. And now they're going to use Iraq, the country that we fought and bled, to attack one of our allies, possibly, to try to prevent Israel from going back and bombing Iran. It's heartbreaking, man. It's a little bit disgusting too that's what we ended up passing over. Like, we handed Iraq to Iran on a silver platter. It's terrible, dude.
As we talk, let's jump to 2006 here.
Okay.
Put us in time. Like, where are you at in your career? What are you doing there? Your role in the team, like, where are you all going in?
Yeah, 2006. Well, in 2005, just taken over as a team sergeant. So I'm leading a special forces team as an enlisted. I'm an E8. I'm a master sergeant. The pinnacle of my career.
Yeah. It's a huge deal.
The highest of the highs. I to that point, 15 years in the making to get to that level, to lead a special forces team. I'm experienced and I'm well trained. By that point, I'll be working on my third combat deployment to Iraq. I've multiple rotations and missions in the Balkans. I've done combat search and rescue missions. I've done special reconnaissance in the mountainous terrain of Kosovo, on the border of Macedonia. I protected 2 U.S. presidents by providing counter sniper security support. Clinton in Sarajevo on Sniper Alley, which was really cool. Told another story on that one. And then President Bush 43 in Kosovo. And, in addition to being a Green Beret, I'm Ranger qualified. I'm a graduate of the Special Operations Target Interdiction Course, SOTIC, which is a fancy name for being a sniper. So, dude, I'm at the pinnacle of my career. And I have a young team. Most of my team are all brand new. They've never been to combat before. A lot of them had never deployed before. Even if it was like a peacetime, like, hey, we're going to go to Panama and do some jungle training. Like, a lot of them, it was their first trip. And it was a combat trip to Baghdad. And Baghdad was Donkey Kong crazy. So the time period that we're looking at, that, I took the team. I basically, with the help of others, built the team up because it was kind of like a brand new team. It had been formed with a previous team because of bodies, but it was like, hey, this is going to be 4-3, ODA 043, Operational Detachment Alpha 043, Special Forces team. And we're going to go to Baghdad and do sensitive special operations for impact. And that was very ambiguous and vague. And I credit Chief Steve Dayspring, one of my mentors. It's like, hey, you just weren't over there doing human intelligence, taking reports. Like, that's not what we do. You were doing sensitive special operations to create impacts. And that allowed us a lot of latitude. But that was the primary thing that we were doing, was to collect intelligence. We took it to a whole nother level. But we were going to be there from January 2006 to August 2006 in Baghdad. And we were at Camp Apache, which is in Adamiyah, which is basically a suburb of Baghdad. And it was actually, which is really interesting, I think, about Adamiyah, is Adamiyah reportedly was one of the last known locations that Saddam surfaced before he disappeared. And then I think he went up. I think they ended up capturing him like Tikrit or somewhere around his hometown. But reportedly, Adamiyah was the last place publicly he was seen, and then he vanished and went on the run. And the reason I think it's kind of interesting, but it makes sense because Adamiyah is a Sunni stronghold. Like the different little districts, and there's a picture in the book which hopefully will help people kind of follow along. But the 9 little suburbs of Baghdad, kind of broken down. And there might be some Shia in this area, like Sadr cities, primarily Shia, but Adamiyah was Sunni. And in Adamiyah, they had one of the largest Sunni mosques, and it was Abu Hanifa. And there was no way that you were going to drive the Sunni out of Adamiyah and away from Abu Hanifa, like one of their top mosques. Like it wasn't going to happen, because what we saw happening was when Saddam fell and all of his top people were getting killed, the deck of cards, the Shia started moving in. And I think this is where Iran was definitely playing chess while we were playing checkers. And they were outmaneuvering the shit out of us, dude. They really were. And I remember hearing about it in 2004. And I remember kind of like, some of the reporting that we would get laughed at. It's like, hey, we're getting reports. And we're out in like some small little town. We were east of Bakuba. This is 2004, 2005. We were east of Bakuba. In between like Balad, Ruz, and Mandalay, 2 little small no-name towns. But it was right on the Iranian border. And we would get a lot of reports. There's Iranians coming in, killing all the teachers, pilots, instructors, professors. Like,
damn.
It all makes sense looking back that they were targeting some very key people that they didn't want to, maybe replicate things or be able to influence. Like it was pretty damn strategic. I remember hearing that in 2004, 2005. But anyway, Iran was having some influence, but and the Shia were getting pushed into all these formerly Sunni areas. Yeah. But it wasn't happening in Adamiyah. There was no way. It was going to be an all-out,
Sunni stronghold,
which it ended up. That's what it turned out to be. But it was an interesting dynamic, man. And that's when I tell you. Well, do you want to talk a little bit about kind of the start of the January 2006?
Yeah. Okay. And real quick, just before you get there, so the team is new, but have they trained together, or they're truly like thrown together in the previous few months?
Yeah, they were formed in the previous few months, and I think this is very important.
That's tough.
Yeah, I think this is very important because this was something that was very intentional. I'd had experience in Iraq, and I knew Baghdad was going to be a whole different ballgame, because the first combat deployment was up north in Erbil. The second one was kind of like a sleepy, you're out there on the Iranian border. So I knew that we were getting ready to be involved in something a lot more serious. And my team and I, we embraced the mission. We embraced where we were going. And I had a vision. And I shared the vision with everyone on the team. So there was no doubt. I wanted to go to Baghdad and I wanted to dominate. I didn't want to be reactive. I wanted to be proactive. I didn't want to be on the defense. I wanted to be on offense. I wanted to take the fight to the enemy. And I made that very clear. Because unfortunately, it all depends on what kind of team you're dealing with. Not all teams think that way. Some teams, maybe their senior leadership are like, maybe, they're realizing things that it took me years to realize, like, hey, this is kind of bullshit.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Play it easier.
They play it easier.
Because this
you have
is
so
not as
much,
important.
Dude, your left and right limit is ginormous, bro.
In SF.
In Special Forces.
Yeah.
It's a lot of it's your call. And, dude, I know of some teams that wanted to do Halo and Call of Duty shit. And they would do some reports here and there. And we could have done that. easily done that. We could have eliminated most of the risk and just bullshitted around and did our January to August 8-month rotation and went home. Blah blah.
Oh, you mean Halo and Call of Duty shit? Like play those games, not like go and do crazy stuff out in the.
Like,
oh, I see.
They're gamers.
Yeah,
dude.
Got it.
I mean, seriously, I'm not joking. So the leadership of a special forces team has a lot of latitude, and we wanted to have that extreme work ethic and bust our ass, dedicate ourselves to the mission. And I knew that I had to do that because I had a young, inexperienced team. And dude, we're doing basics. We're doing basics at Fort Carson, Colorado. We're changing tires. We're doing vehicle maintenance shit. We're trying to do our tow straps and how we're going to tow vehicles around and all that. The other teams in the company are more experienced, are more mature, are more talented. And they had their laughs. They're seeing us. And a lot of those times, man, they would take the afternoons off, take the weekends off, and we're working, man. We embrace the grind. And they kind of had a laugh at our expense. But here's one thing that I learned that I thought was very valuable. And, of course, this is in the book. We outwork those teams, man. Yeah. And hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And all those things that we did that they laughed at or they thought was stupid, some of that stuff came in to save our lives. I mean, we didn't know it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a challenging time. We had a young team, and I had one really experienced dude that I'd served with before. That was probably, he didn't have the experience that I had, but he was pretty close, and he was senior. And unfortunately, that's going to lead us to, I get to, we fly into Baghdad International Airport early January 2006. And like our first few days, we're just supposed to like kind of in process, and they have all of our photos and, how we're going to do our arrangements if we get killed. They have all of those things, right, that you have to take care of. And there's only like a couple of us. We're like the advanced party. And it's kind of like this, it's got to be very orchestrated because we're trying to relieve another special forces group with our group and how you change out all those different teams and personalities and all that stuff. So there's only a few of us. And almost immediately when I get on the ground, I start hearing rumors and whispers. It's like, oh, that's the party team. That's 4-3. That's the booze team, And I'm like, what the fuck are they talking about? I didn't know. I'm like, what are you, like, I'm not even really a big drinker. Yeah. I don't really have a taste for beer. And I couldn't understand it. And then I started piecing it together. I'd sent that experienced dude, I won't say his name, but I sent my number 2 guy, basically. I sent him over early, like a month or two before. The guy was going through a divorce, going through a hard time. I was trying to take care of him, get him some extra pay, and kind of get him away from the situation. Because like most SF guys, he wanted to deploy.
Yeah.
He wanted to be... he wanted to be in combat. So I thought I was taking care of him. But what he ended up doing was embarrassing himself and the team. And he started telling the 5th group team, hey, it's alcohol and booze and pills and all this crazy shit, right? So naturally, when we get in there, because 5th group was a little bit different than us, they tended to keep their teams in the same areas. So this team... They're at Camp Apache in Adamia, and they know they're coming right back. So we're going to come in and relieve them, and then they're coming right back to the same place.
So it's important that you guys do a good job.
Critically important because 10th group, we would tend to go, hey, I'm up north in Mosul. Now I'm down all the way south in Basra. We would totally change up our rotation. But 5th group, so when 5th group when they hear... party this, party that, alcohol, booze, can you get us this, can you get us that? their ears perked up, and they're like, "These dudes are ass clowns. They're not serious, and
they're going to jack up our AO." Yeah,
like these guys are going to just bullshit around over here and party, and then we're going to come back, and this whole place is going to be a tinderbox, and it's going to blow up on our watch, and our guys are probably going to get smoked. I get that. I understand that. So once I realized that was the reason, I was like, okay, I'm going to have to deal with this problem. Like right off the bat, dude, that was my opening.
Is that like a team sergeant to team sergeant behind closed doors discussion? Like, hey, why are you guys saying this about our team? How do you figure this out?
Yeah, I ended up hearing it, and then I would hear the whispers in the hallway, and then I believe it was a warrant officer, like a senior warrant, like our company warrant officer, had some friends from 5th Group, like some other warrant officer friends.
Yeah.
And then it was like, hey, dude, what is the deal with this? And it's like, oh, this dude was talking about all this party stuff. So that's how I was able to piece it together. But I knew almost immediately that I needed to fix this. And I had a cancer within the ranks, and I had to cut the cancer out, even though it was one of my most experienced dudes. And one of the few guys that had been to Iraq before. So I had a problem right from the get-go. And when I finally linked up with the 5th Group team that we were going to replace, which is a really good team, and they did some really good stuff. And I talked to the team sergeant, and I apologized, man. I said, man, I'm so sorry. I thought I was taking care of this guy, and I was trying to get him some extra pay, get him away from his soon-to-be ex-wife, all that shit. That's on me. I take that hit. But I'm going to fix this, and that guy's not going to come to the team house. He's done. And the military is a little different, as far as firing people. It's not really a thing. You kind of move someone to, like, for a special forces guy to get moved from a team to a more of an administrative role. Like that's
closest you're getting
fired. Yeah. But you're still in the Army. You're still special forces. You're just not operational per se. And so I talked to the 5th Group team sergeant. I told him that was my plan, and it kind of soothed things over. He was like, okay. These guys aren't going to be like party animals, and they're going to destroy the infrastructure that they had spent so much time building. So I fixed that part, and I had to deal with it though, because the guy that did that is still, I think he was in Italy at the time, he was in Spain with the rest of the team. So I had to wait for the team to fly in from Spain to land in Baghdad. So I could tell him. So there was a few of us that were already at Camp Apache, and the day came that they were going to arrive, and I was basically going to fire this guy, which is a big day.
Yeah.
It's a big day.
Heck yeah.
It's not the norm. So there's a few of us from 10th Group, and what we did was we were going to take some 5th Group guys back and drop them off. And then, it's that kind of that shuffle that you kind of strategically got to do, because you have to have so many people for convoys and all that stuff. So, so my communications guy helped prepare the vehicles, load them all up, and, crypto so we could talk secure, all that stuff. And we got the weapons ready. We had the routes, everything was straight. And me and another guy, we ended up driving back to Baghdad International Airport to pick up the team and to tell this guy that he was not going to be coming with us. So I'm probably 10 minutes out from the link up. We already did the convoy. Everything was great. We're at the airport. We're, friendly territory. And we have these little embassy cell phones that we could talk on and communicate easier than everybody and your brother can hear what's going on the radio. So we have these little cell phones that the embassy issued to all the special forces teams so we could communicate. So I'm 10 minutes out, and I get a phone call from the 5th Group team sergeant. He's like, hey, dude, bad news. Want to let you know we're missing a CYZ-10. And a CYZ-10 is, some people call it a crazy 10, some people call it a little black magic box. It's basically, it gives the military the ability to have secure communications. Think of it like Signal. You know, you can text your friends and your family and you have encrypted, secure communications. You don't have to worry about anyone taking those messages. That's what the little CYZ-10, the little black
expensive and
it's a big
signed
deal.
item.
It's a big deal. He goes, hey, we're missing the CYZ-10. But the way I was hearing him say it, I was hearing they were missing the CYZ-10. So I'm like, man, sucks to be you, bro.
Oh.
But I didn't say that, of course, because I knew how sensitive that was. Like, you know, to be missing a piece of equipment like that, someone's probably going to get fired. So I was just like, damn, heads are going to roll over this shit. Glad it's not me. I'm thinking like, man, I'm glad I'm just getting ready to do this firing thing, you know, instead of dealing what he's dealing with. But then I get like a few minutes out, and then my communications guy calls, and he's kind of moping around, and I'm like, dude, spit it out. What's up? Because I'm focused on what I'm getting ready to do with one of my senior
dudes.
Wait. Yeah, and he's like, hey, you know, the missing C. I was like, dude, that's fifth group's problem. That's fifth group. Like, why are you so worried about it?
Nice of you to try to help out.
Yeah. He's like, that's ours. It's our missing CYZ. And I was like, so we're the fucking jackasses. And that was a gut punch, dude.
Yeah.
Because suddenly, you know, like I was talking about earlier, 15 years, experience, well-trained, pinnacle of my career, you know, highest of the highs. I went from the highest of the highs to the lowest of the lows. I'm getting ready to take someone off my team.
Yeah.
And I'm missing a piece of equipment that is so sensitive that someone is going to get fired, and that someone was probably going to be me. So it wasn't lost on me. It was not lost on me that I'm getting ready to tell someone, you're not going to Camp Apache, you're going to work at battalion, and you're going to be in an administrative role, and I might be the next person
sitting next to you
that's going to be working at battalion, sitting next to you, doing administrative stuff. Like, it wasn't lost on me, dude. But I said, hey, dude, it's going to show up somewhere. Keep looking. Keep looking. That's what I told my communications guy. And I just kind of pushed it off to the side. I was like, I got to focus on this. So then we get there, and they have these tents set up, and I see our team, and they start grabbing their bags when they see us. And I see the dude that I'm getting ready to talk to, and I call him off to the side. Keep in mind, this isn't like some corporate thing where it's like, hey, we're in the HR room and the HR manager's there and the director of whatever's over. Like, this is two special forces guys armed to the teeth. Weapons, grenades, like full amp.
One's
like,
got a drinking problem and going through a divorce.
Yeah,
right?
Going through a problem. And he's got an asp.
Yeah.
He's got an
like
asp.
a nightstick kind of
Yes,
thing. Yeah.
Yes, like one of those expandable asp that he keeps hitting his hand with. That's what he's doing when I say, hey, come over, let's talk. And I say, hey, bro, you know, all the stuff that's going on between 5th group and 10th group, I filled him in a little bit. And I said, hey, man, you embarrassed us. You embarrassed me. You embarrassed the team, and I can't trust you. And I've already talked to the leadership, and you're not going out to Apache. You're going to be staying here in an administrative role. And I knew that was going to crush him, man, because already he's low. And now he doesn't get to do the fun, cool SF combat stuff. And he was pissed, dude. He was pissed. And I was pissed. I mean,
yeah.
I'm even more pissed because he doesn't know what I'm getting ready to deal with as soon as I walk away from him. But I ended up as just like, hey, man, to myself, I was like, hey, man, I'm not here to make friends. Like, this is the decision. There's nothing we can talk about now. It's done. Like,
yeah. Dude, that is hard to do.
Yeah, yeah. And I was a brand new E8, and he's a senior E7. You know, I'm a young master sergeant. He's a senior sergeant first class, both with a lot of experience. And but that's just the way it was. And I had one of my guys help carry his stuff, you know, up to the administrative part of what he was going to be doing. And then we got to looking for this missing piece of equipment. And we ended up convoying back to Apache. And And I was like, dude, how the fuck did you lose this piece of equipment when you walked it from the safe? Like, that's how sensitive this is. Like, it's secured in a safe inside. I was like, you got it out of a locked safe, loaded the vehicles. Did you not walk it back and put it in the safe? It's like, I don't know. You know? So we never did find that immediately. And I had two theories. One of the theories was he loaded the vehicles and he put it like up on the roof or on the bumper.
Oh my God.
And then he kind of just
like a cup of coffee.
Yeah, he
got
your morning
commute.
Doing something else. It was like, man, I want to make sure this is like our first convoy. I want to make sure D's set up and ready to go, and everything's, the radios are working. And he left the CYZ on one of the vehicles, and then we rolled out of there. And at some point on our journey, it fell off the vehicle, and somebody picked up a little black magic box. The second theory was we did have a lot of local Iraqis that secured the compound, that worked on the compound. We had a family that cooked and cleaned and all that stuff. The second theory was they saw a target of opportunity. We were a brand new team. They saw someone wasn't really paying attention that much. And they were like, I think I can get a lot of money for this little black magic box. And they took it. I never did find out what it was, whether it fell off or somebody took it and sold it or whatever. But to get ahead of the story, I don't think I talk about this in the book, but this part, probably 4 months into that rotation, we get a phone call. Hey, at Taji, which was north of where we were in Baghdad, the big base in Taji. It's like, hey, some Iraqi just walked in with this little black magic box, and it matches your serial number.
No way.
They said they found it somewhere.
And they let you stay in your role for those 4 months.
Yeah. Sorry, I got ahead of myself for that. So I kind of got ahead of myself with the CYZ. It was ended up, someone did find it and turn it back in, which didn't help the situation. But at the time, going back to, hey, someone's probably going to get fired, and that someone's probably me. At the time, I was like, man, I just got rid of this dude, and now I have this problem. We're not looking so hot. Like, we're off to a really bad start. Like, I haven't even got the full team there yet. And I can't blame anybody else because the captain who outranks me and the warrant officer who technically outranks me as well, but like, they weren't there. They were in Spain, and they were just coming in. So I can't say, well, hey, it's the captain that should take the... Like, I was the senior guy on the ground. And I'm a little bit embarrassed and ashamed to say that when you get punched in the face like that, and it's your dream job, like you've been wanting this for 15 years, and you finally have a chance to lead. And yes, leading a special forces team is the pinnacle. There is a step higher, and that's to lead a special forces team in combat. So, yeah, it did affect me, man. And I did embarrassed, a little bit ashamed to say that my initial reaction was to kind of... the human tendency was kind of like deflect and be like, he lost it. I didn't lose it. He's responsible. I'm not responsible. He should get fired. I shouldn't get fired. But I had to kind of... I had to kind of remind myself, control what you can control, take a deep breath. It's oftentimes how we respond to these situations or adversity that really define who we are, that define who we are as a person or defines our character. It's not, hey, the situation happened and it was just a bad situation, dude. And I was somewhere else. Yep. But... how am I going to respond to this? And I had to kind of take a deep breath and regroup. And then within hours, our main boss at the time, Colonel Kentovo, who's now retired Lieutenant General Kentovo, had a great career. And he's a great mentor of mine. And he wrote a very nice testimonial for the book that I really was humbled and grateful, as I was with yours. Yeah. Awesome. He wrote a nice one for me too, but I found out Kentovo was going to come to the team house, like right after the missing piece of equipment. was reported. And I knew, the team knew, he knew the reason he was going to come down. And it was either going to fire me or keep me. And going back to that control what you can control mantra, I said, hey, this situation happened and it sucks, man. It sucks. I never saw myself in a situation like that with such a sensitive piece of equipment. But the only thing I can control is I can be a man and own up, put my big boy pants on, don't do that whole victim mentality bullshit, and have like radical ownership, take radical responsibility. And that's what I felt like was the best decision at that time. And man, it sucks. It sucks when you have an 06 full bird colonel coming down to talk to you, and you know that your ass is on the line, man, and you're in your dream job. And I had to look him in the eye and say, sir, I take full responsibility for the missing CYZ-10. I take responsibility. I can assure you, sir, it'll never happen again. And I can assure you, if you give me a second chance, you won't regret it. And to this day, I should have a conversation with him.
I would love to hear that conversation.
Yeah. To this day, though, in my humble opinion, I haven't asked him, but I think that's why he gave me a second chance, because I owned it. I think if I would have done the typical victim mentality bullshit, deflect, human tendency, blame someone else, I think I probably would have been out of there. Probably like that, dude. But I think I owned it, and I think he saw something in me, and I think I had the support of my battalion commander, Sean Swindell, Lieutenant Colonel Sean Swindell, now Major General retired Sean Swindell, and my company sergeant major and my company commander, Phil Mala and Howie Massengill. I think they all had a lot of support and trust. And dude, once I had that second chance, though, it was game on.
Yeah,
like. It was,
and you get it back later. I can't even imagine how excited were you on that call when they're like, hey, this thing came back.
Yeah, it did make me feel good. And by that time, though, we were already on a good roll.
Yeah, I bet.
So, but yeah, man, and I think that's what's really important to kind of say about the book.
That's the grit, yeah.
Yeah, that's the grit part of it, that resilience, getting punched in the face, and how you get back up, man. You got to get back up because help's not coming. No. It's all on you. And I think just telling that story and exposing something that's kind of shitty.
Yep.
It's not the way anybody wants to start a combat deployment. I mean, you're at the bottom of the bottom, dude. And it wasn't a good feeling, but we were able to work our way through it, dude.
So I think that's perfect because it speaks to the book. It speaks to the grit, which we'll jump into here in a bit. But I think that's a good place to pause for this first portion, getting us into what is going to take place in a lot of the book and thereafter. So Awesome. I hope you enjoyed that combat story. We've got round 2 coming up with Darrell next week. I think you're really going to enjoy it. It is chock full of some of his combat experiences, the highs and the lows, and some really interesting ones, not just from 2006, which you'll see in this book, but also in 2007. Definitely take a look at the book, but go to Ballast, BALLAST books.com to find it. Puts a little more money in Darrell's pocket, which we want to do to help him out. But it'll be available to everybody in late November, early December of 2024, depending on when you're listening to this. But if you do order that thing before November 11th, Veterans Day, you can get a signed copy and a very cool challenge coin. As always, you can check out our newsletter at combatstory.com/newsletter. And wherever you are in the world, hope you have a good rest of your day or week or weekend. And as always, stay safe.